which is the mitzvah that if you stole something, you have to return it. That is a positive command in the Torah. If you stole something, the Torah says, "V'heshives hagzela asher gozal," you have to return the item that you stole. You shouldn't steal, and you shouldn't get into the situation where you have to do this mitzvah. It's not like, okay, I want to do that mitzvah. I want to do mitzvah 130, so I'm going to do Aveira 126 and steal something. Now I could do that mitzvah. That's not a mitzvah that you want to do. However, if you have stolen something, there is a positive command to give back the item that you've stolen. Now, let me give you a few of the rules, then we'll open it up a little bit. The first rule is that if you did steal something, you have to give back the item intact, unless the item no longer is in existence. In other words, you can't steal something and then say, well, I want to pay it back, I'll just give you the money and I'll keep the car. Even if you pay the true value of the item. Well, I took your basketball and I'm really enjoying it, so I'll just give you $30 here, go buy another one. You can't do that. You have to give back the item intact, unless the item does no longer exist. If you sold a car, or they dismantle the car. In Israel, they steal cars and they take them out to the territories. Within 10 minutes, those cars are scrap metal. They take them the parts, they take those cars are. So the halacha is that you have to pay back. You have to pay back what you've stolen. You have to give back the item. Number one, there are certain rabbinic laws. First of all, stealing is very severe, and there is a concept that if you steal something and do not return it, you could be reincarnated and live an entire life again only for the purpose of returning the item which you've stolen. And that you'll meet the person or his descendants or whatever it is, so that one day you will have to pay him. That reincarnation is a concept we believe in. We don't know in any individual situation. So if you say, yeah, I think I remember this from a different lifetime, you don't. And they say that deja vu, they say, I don't know who they is, but they say deja vu is actually a form of reincarnation, but then again, they don't know what they're talking about. Deja vu is deja vu. It just means you're daydreaming, or you are experiencing drug flashback, but it has nothing to do with reincarnation. So why be spiritual? Why not be spiritual? We go, it must be reincarnation. Maybe it's just that ecstasy kicking in once again. So we don't know that. We don't know anything about what do you call it? What we do know is that when somebody is brought back, there are different opinions among the Kabbalists how many times you could come back. You could come back, according to some, you come back endless amount of times till you do the job right. And there are those that say you get 4 chances. You come back as a reincarnation, and you come back 4 times. Whatever it is, when you are reincarnated for something that needs to be rectified. So much so, there are opinions among Kabbalists that a Down syndrome person is a reincarnation of a very lofty soul, very high neshama, and they're brought back as a Down syndrome because they don't need the obligations to do all the mitzvahs. You can't, in a Down syndrome, he can't get married, and he's got limited intellectual accomplishment. But let's say, for example, they could be trained to answer amen. So it could be this guy was a very big tzaddik in a previous life, and there's just one time he happened to be talking in shul, and he missed saying one amen. So he could be brought back reincarnated to live his entire life as a Down syndrome child in order to get to the point where his father could educate him to say amen, and after that he's ready to be taken. Now that doesn't mean that in any particular instance you could say, that Down syndrome child, you must have been a tzaddik. We don't know on an individual. We know as a general rule what could be. But to cross that line and say that's what is, so for example, if a person is immoral, he could be reincarnated as a dog. Somebody who behaves immorally could be brought back as a dog. There's even a concept of being brought back as an inanimate object. He could be brought back as a rock or a tree, which is a drag. But if you're brought back as a dog, the difference is that when you're brought back as a human being, you do not remember your previous incarnation. Whereas when you're brought back as an animal, you do, and that's part of the pain. Because you remember that you were once a human being. Now you're trapped in an animal body, and you'd like to talk, and all that comes out is a bark. So just imagine, I'll get to 1 second, Andrew. Just imagine being reincarnated as a dog and sitting under the table eating scraps that are being thrown to you by your former wife and her new husband, right? Who is a guy who you never really liked much when you were alive to begin with. Now, how about that for a frustration? And there they are throwing you, what do you call it? Throwing you scraps. So that's pretty nasty. So we don't want to be reincarnated, and the Kabbalists say that one of the causes for reincarnation is theft, that you could be brought back having to return what do you call it? They having to return the stolen objects in a later lifetime. Go ahead, hon.
I don't know if this question has a simple answer, but
I'll be the first to let you know.
Yeah, the question is, how can it work to come back as an animal or an inanimate object, or frankly even a non-Jew, when you have different levels of soul? Like, where do the rest of your soul levels?
You're talking about a subject that is so far beyond us. It's not a simple object; it's a very complex object. We don't know. We picture souls as, you've got your soul. Your soul is 5 feet 9 inches tall, and mine is 6 feet 1 inches tall, and yours is 6 feet 3 inches tall. We got our soul, and this is my soul, and this is your neshama, and here we are. That's oversimplification. The majority of our soul is not even in our body. Right. The majority of our soul is, we have as much of our soul. The Sfarim talk about the description of the soul is, you have as much soul as your body as a shoe has body in it. There's the same way that you're in your shoes, but you're not. Most of you is not in your shoes. It's only the very bottom of your body that's in your shoes. Most of our neshama is not in our body. Most of our neshama is connecting from here to there, wherever there is, and it's only a very small amount that's in our body. And the body actually functions for the soul like a shoe functions for the body, which the commentator is a fascinating subject. Again, anything I tell you about this, I don't know firstly what I'm talking about. I'm only repeating what the books say. I don't know anything on the ins and outs of the subject. I'm going to tell you, the descriptions are interesting descriptions. They at least give us an insight into what's going on. Your body needs some sort of buffer between your body and the earth, because your body is delicate, the earth is coarse, and if you walk around in your feet, it's going to hurt. So you put on something that creates the buffer, right? That's the shoe. So the neshama is described as, the neshama is very delicate, and the last thing the neshama wants is to be in this very coarse world. This world is way too coarse for the neshama, which is refined and delicate. So the thing that acts as a shoe for neshama is your body. Your body becomes that coarse thing that allows your neshama to march around in this world, just like the shoe becomes the thing that allows your body to march around in the physical world. You understand? That's one of the explanations, by the way, for that mitzvah of yibum. The mitzvah of yibum, when one brother dies and the other brother, they have no children, so the second brother marries her. And what they're really doing is, according to the good books, that's a fascinating subject, the neshama that has not left any offspring has a desire to stay connected to this world. There's some sort of connection. On the one hand, the neshama doesn't want to be in this world. On the other hand, it seems to be that once the neshama is in this world, it wants to leave a positive impression, which is usually what we call children. Now, if you haven't left children, your neshama still has the desire to have that connection to whatever its job was in this world. The only way that could be done is if the brother marries the sister-in-law and they produce a baby, and that baby becomes the body where the soul goes into. That is believed to be the soul of the deceased brother, then goes into the baby. That's when the Torah says that the baby is called on the name of the deceased brother. You don't name the baby the same name. It doesn't have to be the same name. And in the cases of Yibum in the Torah, they're not given the same name. But the body of the brother, the body is a source for the word Shem. The word Shem is the two letters Shin Mem, is the middle two letters of the word Neshama. Neshama is Nun, Shin, Mem, Hey. That means the essence of your neshama, the middle of your neshama, is your name. Your name is a description of your neshama. So whatever your name is, and however your parents arrived at that name is in Hebrew. The Hebrew name is a description of your neshama, and therefore your task in life, whatever that means. So when they produce a baby, they're producing a baby to contain that neshama and bring that neshama, give it continuance in this world. That's why, look how remarkable it is. What if the brother says he doesn't want to marry the sister-in-law? So then what process did they go through? Chalitza. What does chalitza involve? Removal of his shoe. And she spits on the ground to show that this guy is not willing to bring about the continuity of the brother. Well, the removal of the shoe is exactly what he's doing. Symbolically, he didn't want to provide a shoe for his brother's soul, the physical body. Therefore, his shoe is removed. His physical shoe is removed. That's the connection. Otherwise, why are you removing shoes? That's the connection. The connection between Yibum is and what do you call it? So when it comes to reincarnation, we know so little about the soul because your soul has many different aspects. It could be only one part of your soul is being reincarnated. We think of our soul as one chunk of soul. Who said it's like that? You have one good part of your soul, one bad part of your soul. Some of your soul could be punished. Some of your soul could be rewarded. We think of the soul. The soul is not a physical entity. It's an oversimplification. What it is exactly, we don't know. What it is exactly, we don't know. But I know what it isn't. It's like when they say, what do angels look like? I can tell you what angels don't look like. Whatever you're picturing, they don't look like. That's for sure. Whatever you picture an angel to look like, because you and I, we've all been ruined by TV and Hollywood. Whatever you picture an angel is some guy with a pitchfork, or that's a bad angel, and the good angels go, woo, fluttering around. So there are all sorts of descriptions at Nach about what the angel looks like, right? But that's not everybody's got their own picture of an angel. To be an angel is a guy who's giving you a whole wad of $100 bills. That's an angel. I don't care what color he is. As long as he's giving me a wad of $100 bills, he is an angel. So whatever it is you're picturing, it isn't. Now, here the Torah comes along and the Torah says that you have to give back the theft. Otherwise, the Kabbalists say you could be reincarnated. That's not why you give it back. You don't say, okay, listen, I got to avoid reincarnation. Here's the money back. You give it back because of the Torah command. That's why you have to give it back, so you're not stuck with the theft. Now, there was a rabbinic, based on this law, there's an interesting rabbinic law. Let's say you steal a wooden beam from me. You steal a long 2x4, and then you build a house. And this wooden beam is the main pillar that's holding up your house. Then you decide one day you want to do tshuva. How are you going to? And the halacha is that if it's intact, you got to give it back. Now what? That means you're going to have to wreck your house, right? Well, do you know a lot of people who are going to do that? So the Chachamim understood that if you insist on maintaining the Torah level of the law, so what's going to happen is that people are not going to do tshuva because they understand, hey, listen, I want to do tshuva. I don't want to wreck my house. So the rabbis instituted something called Takonas Hashavim. Takonas Hashavim means it is a rabbinic institution for the benefit of those who want to do tshuva. And what they said is that if you steal a beam and build it into the house, you don't have to return the beam. You only have to return the value of the money. That is the first rabbinic institution. It's called Takonas Hashavim. You understand the logic? The logic is because if you don't, people won't do tshuva. So if it's a question of two evils, well, no, people won't do tshuva, or they'll do tshuva, but they'll do second-degree tshuva, which is to pay you back for the beam. So I can take the money and go buy another beam. At least you didn't have to wreck your house, and that gives you an opportunity. The rabbis instituted something called Takonas Hashavim, the institution for the benefit of those who want to do tshuva, number one. Number two, there's another rabbinic institution, which is if somebody is, now this is not as firm because the rabbis cannot demand it of us. Here, the rabbis instituted something where it doesn't cost you anything. It only costs you inconvenience, it doesn't cost you money. It doesn't cost me money because I'm going to have money and I'll be able to buy a beam. So it costs me the inconvenience of having to go and buy a different beam, okay? Then there's another situation. A guy is a well-known thief. Let's say there's a guy in the yeshiva who's been running around stealing iPods and watches and wallets, and the guy decides he wants to do tshuva. So how do you do tshuva? You got to give back everybody the item you stole. So there the rabbi said, we can't pass a law because you have the right to take back what was stolen from you. We prefer you do not accept your item back. The rabbis, as the expression of the Gemara is, Ruach HaChamim Nocha Heimenu. The rabbis are pleased with you if when a well-known thief comes over, it's one time guy who stole something, he says, listen, Hunter, sorry, I took your iPod. I was sitting there and I took it, and here's it back. But a well-known thief who's been stealing laptops and iPods, and now the guy's, he's got to do tshuva now. And he comes over to you to return it to return it to you. So then the rabbi said, you know what, we prefer you don't accept it back. You know why? What do you think is the logic? What do you think is the logic? And again, we can't stop you from accepting it back. We didn't institute that you're not allowed to accept it back, but we recommend that you don't accept your item back. Just be willing to forego it. Why? What do you think is the logic? What we're worried about is that if a guy starts giving everything back, he's going to realize, maybe he doesn't even have all the items. Some of the items he might have gotten rid of. Now he's got to spend money, buy the items, give you the money back. A guy may become discouraged from doing tshuva. If everybody's willing to take their item back, and this guy has all these items he's got to give, somebody say, hey, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to get, I won't have anything left. The Gemara even mentions a case where a guy decided he wanted to do tshuva. So his wife said to him, if you're going to give back everything you stole, you won't even be left with your belt. And when the guy heard that, he changed his mind and said, you're absolutely right, and he didn't do tshuva. At that point, they said that when a thief, who is a well-known thief, again, we're going to talk about a well-known thief who's got a big tshuva ahead of him, then we would do us a favor and don't accept your item back. Now again, they did not say you can't accept it. You have the right to say, well, listen, let somebody else be the tzaddik. I want my laptop back. You do have that right. And therefore they didn't institute, you're not allowed to take it back. We would prefer that you don't for the sake of tshuva. Whereas where the guy builds a beam into the house, there you cannot demand the beam back because the guy is giving you value. And we appreciate the difference between value and not value. That's number one. Number two, there was an incident. There's actually an incident with Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, Rabbi Yashiv's son-in-law. This is it's just mind-blowing. Couple comes to him, Israeli couple, became Bali Chuvas. And the husband says to him, look, we were suppliers for grocery stores. We get the stuff from the company, and we were what's the middleman called? What's the word called in English, the fancy word? What's it called? Conduit. The conduit. They're the suppliers. What's the word? The merchandiser. We're the distributors, the merchandisers, okay? So, and all the local little makolets over here, they sell milk, and they sell little lachmaniyot, and they sell cheese, and all these things. The guy says, look, for the last 15 years, when we distribute stuff, we'd be scooping stuff off the top. So if we had to give the guy a bag of 500 rolls, we take out 2 or 3 rolls. Nobody sits there counting all the rolls in the bag. And when we bring bags of milk, we take out 1 or 2 bags of milk out of a stock of 1,000. And we've been doing this for about 15 years, and we'd like to do tshuva. And we'd like to pay back all those people for the amount that we've stolen. So Rabbi Zilberstein said to him, how much do you assess that it came out to? The guy says between $150,000 and $200,000. So he says to him, okay, the halacha is if you stole, you have to return it. So the guy says to him, we thought you would say that, and we made up our mind before we ever came to ask you the question that if that's what you rule, we will sell our flat and move into a rented flat so that we have the money to pay back because we want to do tshuva. So Zilberstein stood up and he said to the guy, I want to tell you something. People like you protect the Jewish people from harsh decrees. Somebody who's willing to do tshuva, on financial tshuva, where you've stolen and it's going to cost you and it's going to hurt, a person like you protects the Jewish people from harsh decrees. Because that's real tshuva. That's real tshuva. Real tshuva is when you're willing to give back the money. By the way, what's that? It's genuine intent. Genuine intent. There's nothing more genuine than money. That's a rule in life, right? That's a rule in life. You mean it? Put down the money. That's a proof. A guy, people talk about make all sorts of predictions. Well, I think, what do you call it? I think the Pacers are going to win this year. You really think so? Yeah, I'm pretty convinced. I'm telling you, okay, let's bet. Put your money where your mouth is. That's a great equalizer. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear anything until you put your money where your mouth is. I knew a kid in the yeshiva who was going through a very bad nervous breakdown. It happens. Kid had all sorts of emotional problems, and he said that he has ways of predicting the future. He's got insights in the future. So everybody was dealing with him with kid gloves. Nobody wanted to rock the boat, and people were humoring him a little bit, until he walked over to the Rosh Yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva happens to be a very, very direct, a very smart man, a very direct man. So this kid comes over, he says, this Rosh Yeshiva says, okay, I want a tip on tomorrow's market. The kid says, well, I want a tip on the market. If you can't give me tomorrow, it's all nonsense. Put your money where your mouth. I want to know. If I can't make money off it, then it's all nonsense. Right? Until the kid got to the point where he admitted he doesn't know. He doesn't have the point. You can talk all you want. You're willing, but you want to back it up with money. That's the equalizer in life, right? When it comes to money, that's what determines what people really are. Everything else is chit chat. The Gemara says if you want to know a person, there are 3 ways to tell the person: bikoso, bikiso, uvikaso. Did you ever hear that? The Gemara says you want to know what a person is really like. Check what he's like bikoso, when he's in his cups, when a guy is drunk. What comes out when a guy's drunk? They'll let you know what's really going on inside. Bikiso means his wallet. What's he like when it comes to money? Uvikaso is what's he like when he gets angry. That's what tells you what a person is. Everybody's all polite and till there's a $10 bill lying on the table. That'll tell me what, okay, guys, there's a $10 bill on it. Whoever takes it first gets to keep it. That'll tell me a whole lot more about your personality than 6 months in yeshiva of chit-chat. right? Because that's when I'll see what the real person is. Same thing when you get angry. One guy gets angry and he just, control. The other guy, he's flying around the house, just slamming doors. Okay, then I see where. And because of when you're drunk. When you're drunk, because one guy gets drunk, he gets up on the table, puts a lampshade on his head, pulls down his pants, and he thinks he's clever. Right? Okay, so now I know what's going on inside. You have another guy who gets drunk and he starts telling Chafetz Chaim stories. Right? That's quite different than the guy who's than the guy who's running around with a lampshade on his head. So the human nature is very much focused on money. Very much focused on money, and a person who's willing to give back what he stole without rationalizing. And we are great rationalizers. Oh, are we good at rationalizing? Does it ever happen to you that you walk over to a vending machine and you happen to you just tap it, out comes a Coke for free. Well, those vending machines owe me anyway. They've ripped off my money so many times. It's like as if all vending machines in the world are related. It's one conglomerate. I'm going to make them pay finally. That's a great rationalization. You got nothing to. The halacha is you have to figure out how to return it. There are halachas over here. It's not just what he calls. It's not just it's not a game. I was once in the dentist's office, and I had to pay 34 shekels for an X-ray years ago. Also, maybe 15 years ago, I paid 34 shekels for an X-ray. So I reached in my pocket. I had 33 shekels change. So I gave it to the lady. And I said, this is all I got. I got 33 shekels change. That's all I got. Or I got 40 shekels. I got two 20s. So she said, just give me the 33 shekels. You bring in the next shekel next time. I said, I don't want to. I said, I don't want to owe the money, in case I forget. So she said to me, all right, then just forget about it. I said, you're really not authorized. You can't. You're working here. You can't just tell me to forget it. And I don't want to have the responsibility. I'd rather just give you the 20. Give me the 6 shekels change. I don't want to owe that shekel. So, she had trouble understanding. And then at one point I said, I don't want to have to come back for a shekel. She said, you don't have to come back for a shekel. I said, I don't mean to the dentist's office. I mean to this world. I don't want to come back to this world for a shekel, because I forgot to pay a shekel. So we have to take it. And the halacha is that whether it's a shekel or 100 shekels, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference how much money it is. Theft is theft. Once you steal, to the contrary, it's often more difficult when it comes to small amounts. Because, how important is it? So I owe the guy a quarter, big deal. If you owe a guy $1,000 and you got any country, you're going to pay the guy and he's not going to let you forget it. Little amounts is much easier. Did you read that story that happened last year, by the way? There was a guy from the other yeshiva that I'm involved with who bought a desk. This story was circulating. The guy, I think he was in, where was he, in Boston or in somewhere on the East Coast? The guy bought a desk.
Found a bunch of money in it?
Found a bunch of money in the desk. Well, it wasn't just a bunch of money. You know how much it was?
How much?
$98,000.
What? American dollars?
American dollar. I don't care if it's Hong Kong dollars. I got news for you. 98,000 of anything is enough.
98,000 yen.
98,000 yen is about right. Okay, dollars. Canadian dollars, American. I don't care what. The guy's a yeshiva guy, and they bought a desk from.
1,000 kip is like $10.
What is it? Where do they have kips?
Wow.
In Laos, yeah. Well, I'm talking about where there's real. I'm not talking about monopoly money. The guy buys this desk, and he couldn't fit the desk into the house. He bought an old desk from a little old lady, not a Jewish lady. He couldn't fit the desk into the house, into the room that he wanted to put it in. So they took the desk apart, and he pulls out one of the drawers, and in the back, all the way jammed in the back, an area he would never looked at anyway, there's a sack, a little bag. So he pulls out this bag. It's absolutely stuffed with cash. The guy starts, he's got $98,000 cash over there. So he called the Rav. What do you do? He got into his car, drove over, gave it back to the lady. $98,000. He gave it back to the lady. By the way, according to halacha, it's far from clear that he was obligated to do so. It's not clear that he was obligated to do so. You certainly make a Kiddush Hashem. When you do so. There's a story in the Talmud. There's a medrash that says there was a queen who lost a bracelet, very expensive bracelet or a necklace, whatever it was. So she put out a royal announcement, a royal edict. Anybody who finds the bracelet within 30 days and returns it will be rewarded. If you don't return it within 30 days, you'll be killed. You'll be punished.
Who's you?
What's that? Any of the people, anybody who finds it. The queen put out this royal edict.
Like, who would she kill?
whoever it is that, that was whatever it was. That's what, or if somebody says, somebody reports that this guy, we know he found it, he didn't return it. Okay. One of the Chachamim, Rav Shmuel Bar Susrati, found it. And he waited and waited and waited, and on day 31, he brought it in and returned it. So the queen said to him, there was a 30-day deadline. Maybe you didn't know that. He said, I knew. She said, well, maybe you didn't understand that there's a punishment for anybody who returns it after the deadline. He says, yeah, I knew. She said, so why did you wait? He says, I'll tell you why. Because if I would have returned it within 30 days, you would have thought that I'm returning it because I'm intimidated by you. I want you to know that I'm returning it because the Torah says I have to return it, not because of your law. And so, of course, he said, oh, wow, the Jews are wonderful, and if you reward them, they all live happily ever after. That's what the Medrash says. The person said, no, we do have an obligation. You have to know the halachas. There are certain times you can keep something, but whatever it is, when you steal something, that's what the Torah says you have to give it back. Okay. Now, this also applies, by the way, to work. You are not allowed to take items from the office. Sometimes people take liberties. You take pencils home, staplers home, laptops home, office cars home. Whatever it is that's not you're in the idea that everybody's doing it. Everybody does it is not a valid excuse by any stretch of the imagination. And the same thing applies to hotels, Holiday Inns. A guy's got a Holiday Inn towel in his house. The little soaps. I'll get to that in a second. I'll get the question in a second. You go to Holiday Inn, so people in hotels, anything that's not tied down, people take towels, soaps, shampoos, that sort of thing. If the TV comes out of the wall, oh, good, it's loose. I can take that also. You can't do that. You cannot take liberties. Now the question becomes, what about soaps and shampoos, that sort of thing? So my kids and I, we went to a Shabbaton recently. We did a Shabbaton for a certain group. And I've trained my kids. Any time we've been in a hotel, they said, Daddy, can we take a shampoo home? Can we take some soap home? So I said, my kids, well, just go right up to the front desk and ask the manager. Right? I'm not the manager. Ask the manager if you could take the soap home. No, we don't want to ask. You don't want to ask, then you can't take it, because maybe he doesn't want you to take it. And you have to get used to it in life, not just assuming everybody does it, and therefore it's okay. To the contrary, hotels have tremendous amount of theft. I didn't even realize. I know that people take soap, shampoo, that sort of ashtrays, towels. People take stuff off of the wagon. The ladies pushing the wagon around the hallway, the laundry wagon and stuff. People just help themselves right into their suitcase. So unfortunately, Israelis have developed a very bad reputation around the world because Israelis go into hotels in their countries that will not let Israelis in right now unless they show that they are coming for business purposes. They do not want Israeli tourists, because they've developed a very, very bad reputation of going into hotels and taking knobs, shower heads, just absolutely stripping the place. So I once mentioned this in a shiur here years ago. I had a guy here who played in the Israeli Basketball League. He was a professional Israeli basketball player. So he said to me that the team was once, I think he said in Brazil or Argentina, the team had gone down there, and they were checking out of the hotel, and just said there was an Israeli lady who comes into the lobby to check out of a hotel. She puts down her suitcase breaks open, and out roll knobs and the sink for the whole thing all over the hotel lobby. The stuff rolls out. So people the world over take these kind of liberties. The answer to your question is, ask. I've been in hotels where I said, do you mind if we take some soap? Yeah, we mind very much. You cannot take the soap. And they have little ketchup packets and mustard packets, that sort of thing. There was a police case here in Israel. There was a family, I don't remember, I had the statistics written down on a different paper because I was laughing when I saw it. The family's made an arrest. They went to a house, I think somewhere in Beersheba or something. This family had 65 towels, 147 sacks of coffee, just a whole supply. And the cops, arrested, and the woman said, we're just collecting souvenirs, so they're going to now count their souvenirs in jail. You cannot do that. Those are liberties you can't take. So
let's say I ask somebody to pick me up and they come in the company car and I didn't know that they come in the company car. Whose fault?
That's not your problem. That's not your problem. You could assume that not everybody who's driving a company car is stealing. People drive company cars. They have a right to drive a company car. Yeah. If you have grounds for suspicion, like why are you in the company car after hours? Are you
On the
supposed?
way back home, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's the company car."
Well, there's nothing he can do. He doesn't have to drive you back to the previous location. But anytime there's grounds for serious suspicion, then you have to, like anything like we were talking about yesterday, if you're really concerned about it, you know when to be suspicious. If a guy, this involves not taking time off of work also, when you're not allowed to take time off of work. You know, if you're being paid by the hour. You can't just go wander off and take a longer lunch break than you're supposed to. If you have a half hour for lunch, it's a half hour. And you can't sit at your computer reading news and doing all sorts of shtick if you're being paid by the hour. If you're being paid by the program, the boss doesn't care how much time you spend working as long as you get finished within a week. I don't care what you do there. That's something else. He's not watching you. But if a guy's paying you to be working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and half the time you're spending on your computer or looking at the news or watching sports highlights, then you're stealing. That's the absolute theft. You're stealing the money.
What if they've hired you to do certain jobs? They don't give you enough work to keep you busy. Couldn't they technically be stealing your time for having you sit there not doing anything?
No, because you accepted the job. They're paying you. You accepted the job knowing that you'll do what they're paying you to be here 8 hours a day. We don't have work for you to sit. You can certainly talk to them about it. But that's not. And it's an important point you're bringing up, because this is one of the rationalizations that people try to use, which is not a valid rationalization. Sometimes a guy's working a job, and your rationalization is, well, for the amount of money they're paying me, they don't mind if I do this, and I don't really have to do this. One second, nobody forced you to take the job. If I hired you for a job I describe, I'm paying you minimum wage, this is what I want you to do. You have an obligation to work your utmost for the minimum wage. I didn't twist your arm to take the job. You feel that you should be getting more money, then you should have told me that to begin with. You agreed to the terms of the job. You can't go in the middle and say, well, anyway, I could take a few things home because anyway, they're underpaying me. That's all pure rationalization. Sometimes they work in these restaurants, I don't know, McDonald's or all these places, so they have rules about what they can take home. What leftovers you're allowed to take home. They have all sorts of rules in many of the food establishments, and sometimes they don't want the workers taking stuff home because then the workers will ruin stuff intentionally. Any ruined hamburger has to go into the garbage, right? Why can't the workers take it home? Because then if the workers know they can take it home, they'll ruin more hamburgers because they can stock up their freezer for the week.
Some McDonald's in London, when they drop hamburgers, they've got to pay for it, their hamburger, their wages.
They did it because they might be doing it on purpose. That makes a lot of sense. Somebody told me he worked in a health club, a very, very ritzy health club. He was a baker. He was in charge of the desserts in the health club. So they had a rule there. That any cake that started, and any they brought out fresh cake every day. He was one of the bakers. Any cake that's been cut into cannot be brought out. It has to be thrown in the garbage. They have to bake a fresh cake. Each day they have to put out a fresh cake. Now, the workers are allowed to eat anything they want while they're there. They're not allowed to take anything home. So I asked the guy, why can't, if a cake's been cut into, why can't you just take the cake home? Why throw it in the garbage? So he said to me, because if you have a rule like that, then you got workers who will take a perfectly good cake, cut into it, and that way they can take a whole cake home. Right? So the rule is, anything for protecting, I got to protect my interests first. I'm not here to do chesed with you. I have to make money, and I can't have a situation where guys are going to be stealing. So all these things, where it comes to a question, just ask. If you don't know, ask. The same thing goes to transferring ownership cards, membership cards. I have a membership in a health club. Could I transfer the membership to you? You're visiting, my cousin's visiting from out of town. Here, take my card. But it says don't transferable. Yeah, but they don't mind. They like when people come to the gym. How do you know? How do you know? Why don't you just call them and ask them? And if you ever had the rule is, if you're hesitant to ask, that means you know you shouldn't be doing it. Do you think I could take a towel home from the hotel? Why don't you ask him? Nah, I don't want to bother him. Bother him. Just bother him. Guy takes a Holiday Inn towel home. Guy takes a Holiday Inn towel home. It's good advertisement for the hotel. Oh yeah? Why you have a lot of people going through your shower room every day to think they Holiday Inn towel? So I heard a woman calls up the school. The class went on a trip. Said, my daughter lost a towel. So the teacher said, did you find a towel? My daughter lost a towel. The teacher says, what kind of towel? She goes, well, it was a red one. It said Holiday Inn on it. You can't do that. You can't take those liberties. So, and so when it comes to theft, because we have such a desire to steal, the Torah has to take very strong precautions. Okay, gents.